When you have the people that really care, it does make a difference. But when you have people that are there for a paycheck, it's really not good. Sometimes the parole officer might be out to get the parolee. Some people are really trying to do the right thing. They're trying to make their life better, trying to get through it. Parole officer would present the evidence to me on how the parolee violated their parole. I don't know you. I don't know what's going on. I'm here to conduct this hearing. Very intricate, very detailed, very flawed. You have to be a very fair and impartial person to do that job. I learned how to leave work at work. I loved it. I enjoyed it. If I helped one person, I felt I did my job.
Hey there, welcome to the Mental Perk Podcast. I'm Carla Hutcherson, licensed professional counselor.
And I'm Brandy Mock, entrepreneur, author, and community leader. And we're here to talk about
real people, real issues, and real talk. Well, welcome back to the Mental Perk. We are so excited. Katie Norris Tipton is a proud graduate of R.L. Turner High School in Carrollton, Texas. Woo woo! She went on to earn her bachelor's degree in criminal justice with a double minor in sociology and social work from East Texas State University, a foundation that set the stage for a powerful career in public service. Katie began her professional journey with J.C. Penney Insurance, but it wasn't long before her path led her to the Texas Department of Criminal Justice Parole Division. She served as a parole officer for 14 years, making a direct impact in the lives of many. In 2012, Katie was promoted to hearing officer with the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles, a role she held with distinction until her early retirement on May 31st, 2025. Beyond the badge, Katie is a proud mom of two, ages 26 and 18, and a beaming grandmother to a 1-year-old grandson. She's also happily married to the love of her life since February of 2020. Welcome to the show, Katie.
Thank you.
So you've not been retired long.
No, not even a month.
Do you miss it?
No.
So what drove you to early retirement?
Well, I did 27 years.
So that's not considered early
3
retirement.
decades.
No. I said when my youngest graduated that I was going to go ahead and retire, and she graduated May 31st.
And you could not get out of there fast enough, could
So
you?
my last day and her graduation was the same day.
Celebration.
Oh,
Yes,
and
yes.
and Cassidy is with us, and she's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah,
She's
she is.
sitting over here
Gorgeous.
supporting mom.
Yes,
So we're
thank
so
you.
excited
Beautiful.
she's here.
Thank you.
So yeah, this is. I thought it was super interesting. And Katie, we've known each other for a long
very
time.
long time. I think since the 6th grade.
Yes.
That's when I went.
You got any
to
stink on
McCoy.
her?
No, she was always so
Okay,
sweet.
you can be honest.
No,
You don't have to
no,
be mean.
no. She really was, because I met when I started in public school in 6th grade, and we actually sat at a little quad table together in Miss Howard's homeroom class.
Oh yes, Miss Howard.
And then we went to junior high and high school. We played softball together for
I'm so
many
sorry.
years.
I'm so sorry.
No, she's always been fun and sweet.
She
and
is. She's
beautiful.
awesome. She's a keeper.
Yeah,
for sure.
she is.
She's a funny little thing.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
we played
Always.
some competitive softball. We were very
We
competitive.
were really good.
Yes.
Yeah, we were really good. So go Bandits. Woo.
I know. And back then, women's softball didn't get the credit that it does now, right?
It
You couldn't even
doesn't.
play in high school.
I know.
We didn't even have that. There
Oh,
weren't
you
high
didn't?
school
No.
teams. No, there were no high school teams.
Shame on y'all.
Yeah.
So we still played, but we were on a select team.
Yeah, and we did travel some.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
did travel.
Yeah.
So it was
Well, now
fun.
it's pretty much all select teams now, and I mean, you got your
play-
high school stuff,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's where you play now. So
Which-
y'all are kind of ahead of the game.
A little bit,
A
yeah.
little bit.
And then I got my daughter into it. She did
Yes.
travel ball for about 8 years.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Fun
it was fun.
stuff. Yes.
Reliving
Awesome.
my life through her. It was fun.
Well, when I saw your retirement, I was like, that's a great episode for a show because the stories that you have to tell regarding, just the whole criminal justice system
Yeah.
and all the mental health and reform that goes into that.
Yeah,
That's
it's a
what we really just want to pick your brain on what that looks like. Because, there's lots of stories right now about criminal justice reform and how prisons aren't really doing the job that they need to do to help these people get the help that they need.
Yes.
And so I feel like this is a great topic, and I feel
Yeah.
like you probably have a lot of information.
Yeah, it's broken.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's very broken.
Yeah.
When you have the people that really care, it does make a difference. But when you have people that are there for a paycheck, It's really not good for...
Especially in that field.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that really just work there for a paycheck.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I loved it. I enjoyed it. If I helped one person, I felt I did my job.
Oh, I love that.
You know?
Yeah.
And, there's one lady in particular that I will never, ever, ever forget. She was on my caseload when I was like early parole officer, like I was a field officer, and so I supervised her. And she was so proud of her job, her little house,
Aww.
and was so proud to show it to me and would say, nobody ever cares. I'd go into her house, she'd say, come look at what I got, and I would always do that for her.
Yeah.
And this is somebody that did she work there, or she was someone that was on parole?
She was on parole.
Okay.
She was on my caseload, actually.
And so for you going into her house, it just showed her a lot of, empathy, appreciation.
Yes. Yeah.
She was so excited when she got this little house. I'll never forget. And it was tiny, but she got it on her own. She went to work. She had a lot of mental health issues, which we talked about.
Which is a lot in the prison system.
And, she had her son was not living with her because, she had been in prison and stuff. But she still got to see him, and she was very proud of him, too. But when I told her I was moving to a different office, she was so sad, and I was sad. And then the next thing I knew, she was in jail, and she's been in and out of jail for all of these years, not having...
That steady person checking in on
That's
her.
kind of how I see it. And then when I would see her, she'd say, I really miss you. Nobody cared about me like you did. So I'll never forget her,
Wow.
And it makes me sad.
That's powerful. But, I mean, on top, you couldn't continue to be that person all the time, because you had to, advance your career and do what you needed to do for your family. But at the same time, wouldn't it be neat reform to take that information and find a job that does do this more long-term, even when they're not still on probation, right?
Right.
Or parole, either way. But maybe just kind of a long-term check-in so that people feel like, okay, we just want to make sure you're staying on the right path.
And, I think that's a really, really great idea, because once they get off of parole, it's like,
it's a free-for-all.
You're done.
Yeah.
And then
there's no structure
nothing for them. You know? Are there some success stories? Yes, lots of success stories. But the revolving door, what I called it, I saw the same people over those 27 years over and over again.
Wow.
I think it's the consistency. I think you pointed that out in your story, how important it is that a lot of these people, while they're in prison, they lose their support system.
They do.
And so really to have something continual in their lives that they can count on for accountability is super important.
And there's a lot of generational crime, I guess.
Yeah.
It follows the family.
It does,
stays in the family. Yeah.
Dad did it.
It's a learned behavior sometimes.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's really sad.
It is sad.
But even more thoughts on reform is to make sure you're working with the families, to make sure kids aren't falling in those footsteps.
And right now, these young people, it's bad.
Yeah.
It's really bad.
So when you say bad, is it worse than what you saw?
Absolutely.
What makes it worse? Walk me through the changes that you've seen evolve through your career.
So what I would call like an old school, parolee.
Yeah.
Mostly they would report like they're supposed to, pretty much do what they're supposed to. No problems, respectful. The young ones, zero respect. They think they're entitled, that they can just do anything, and death to them means nothing.
See, that's scary.
That's really scary.
That's scary.
Because if you don't have that fear, right?
Yeah. And I mean death as in, I will take your life because you disrespected me, too. I mean, these youngsters in that world, they scare me.
So I'm hearing you say this. I'm getting cold chills while you're saying this because, one, what you're saying, but also it's freezing in here. So, but two,
it's either too cold or too hot.
Right. It's menopause, right? At its finest. Sure. But I'm hearing you say this, and it's like, How often did you get scared doing your? So you're saying it's evolved really bad now, but like, did you ever have the time? You're saying you probably would be more scared now to work with these kids or because I'm thinking kids. Are you thinking?
Yeah. So I'm talking like the 19, 20, 21-year-olds. The young 20s. Only one person ever over the career has ever scared me. One person.
That's surprising to me. I would have thought there would have been some. Now, I would have thought you would have, have the face that you're not going to let them know they're scaring you. But
and no, he did not know.
Yeah.
But he was a very scary individual.
So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. It was probably the biggest case that I ever worked. Let me kind of jump back a little bit.
Okay.
So I was a regular, what they call a field officer, where I had a caseload. I supervised individuals. They would come see me. I would go see them at their job, at home, check-ins, all of that good stuff. And then I transferred to a unit, what was called a pre-revocation unit. So what I dealt with there were everybody that was on my caseload was in jail for violating their parole.
Okay.
Okay.
It's a different level then.
Yes.
Okay.
So I would present for the state what they violated to the hearing officer. And then the hearing officer who conducts the hearings would then compile a report and send it to the board to see what would happen to their parole, whether they would be continued on supervision. They would have like middle-of-the-road sanctions too, or revoke their parole and send them back to prison. So I did that for 13 years.
Wow.
And then I promoted and was a hearing officer, went on the other side of the table for another, I did that 12 years for another 13 years.
Okay, so what's tell me the difference between the two then. One's a hearing officer. What's the difference between a hearing officer and a parole officer?
So a parole officer, like I said, has a caseload.
Okay.
And you actually supervise the parolees. Well, that's not the word that they use now. The correct word is offenders. That's the word they use now.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, we've changed words. It used to be releasee, then it was parolee, and now it's offender.
Because someone got their feelings hurt.
Sometimes, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I just...
Offender sounds worse to me than parolee.
I think so, too. I think so, too.
I know, it does.
But that's been the proper term for years.
Okay.
For a lot of years. Okay, so a hearing officer, what I would do, it's almost like...
You're the judge, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Some states call it an administrative hearing officer, an administrative judge, but we're administrative hearing officers. We conduct administrative hearings.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm actually would conduct the hearing.
Okay.
I'd swear people, it's almost like, it's like court.
Okay.
Like a little small court. We would have witnesses sometimes, we'd have attorneys sometimes. And then the parole officer would present the evidence to me on how the parolee violated their parole. I would take in all that evidence, ask questions, and then I'd compile a report with what happened to see, if I felt that they did violate or didn't violate, and then send it to the board, and then board members would decide then.
That's a lot of pressure.
I was about to say that's a lot of responsibility.
It is a lot of responsibility, but you have to be a very fair and impartial person to do that job, because sometimes the parole officer might be out to get the parolee.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah. And then other times the parolee is lying through their teeth.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's hard. It's hard to make that decision. But with
after
all
a
experience,
while,
you kind of,
I was like, can
the
you
game is.
easily read it?
Yeah. Not very many. I would get stuck. And if I would get stuck, then I would call, one of my coworkers, say, hey, look, this is what's going on. And we'd just talk it out.
Yeah.
And then,
Today's episode is sponsored by Hudson Financial Group. At Hudson Financial Group, their goal is to make sure your life is fully covered. Do you truly understand your current insurance coverages? Are you protected for the things you need and not paying for the things you don't? Come by and let them help maximize and understand your coverage. With access to multiple carriers, they'll find the best protection at your best price for you. Whether it's home, auto, farm, and ranch commercial coverages, bonds, life insurance, or financial planning, Hudson Financial Group is your one-stop shop for insurance and retirement needs. Stop by today.
Because if somebody doesn't need to be in jail, they don't need to be in jail. That's not fair.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
You know, and you can't, not everybody is bad.
Right.
You know, some people are really trying to do the right thing, that they, you know, they got into something, you know,
bad situation,
DWI, you know, something like that, you know, like a one-time thing.
They made a mistake,
And they're trying to make their life, you know, better, trying to get through it. Then there's the other ones that are career parolees, you know, that don't care.
So go back to this gentleman that.
Okay.
The scary guy.
Yes. So I was in the pre-revocation unit at the time, so he was assigned to me. Well, he was in there for murder. Okay.
Oh my goodness.
He had violated parole by committing murder.
Oh.
Yes, and he had killed his girlfriend. Very horribly. He actually used his hands and feet to murder her. He had, so let me just kind of put it in perspective. He's like about 6'3", 6'4", pretty good sized man. You know, like not overly huge or anything. She was like 5'1".
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and where she lived was in the projects in West Dallas, South. I don't remember what part of Dallas, but anyways. He actually, at one point, had picked her up and slammed her into the wall, right? And the wall was made out of, like, cinder blocks.
Yeah.
But he hit her threw her so hard in there, you could see the indentation of her shoulders and her head.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, because I was privy to, like, everything. This was such a crazy case that I had the lead detective there. I had the assistant DA at my office. I had grand jury transcripts. I had everything. It was such a big deal. And then I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. And he had actually stomped her body so hard that her aorta was detached.
Oh, wow.
You know, and just, it was really, really bad, really bad. You know,
So he should not be on parole at all.
No. And let me tell you what happened. So the judge, in this case, delivered a instructed verdict of not guilty because they said that the prosecution didn't have enough evidence.
What?
So the police department, I'm not going to say which one.
Well, if it's West Dallas, it's Dallas PD.
No, not necessarily.
No? Okay.
Because we encompasses so many.
Okay.
Yeah, no. They did make some mistakes in the investigation,
right.
You know, and stuff. But to me, it wasn't that much a mistake.
Yeah.
My theory as to why he did this, he was an older white man. She was a young, black, poor prostitute living in the projects, if you get my drift.
Yeah.
He didn't care. That's the way I took it. And her mother was elderly, had her at a really late in life, you know. And I kept in contact with her. So anyway, so we had to do this, right? We had to actually, like, pretty much conduct a trial, you know, so to speak.
To decide if he could get out of jail or not.
Yeah, or if he would go back to prison.
Yeah.
You know.
Because he violated a parole. So he'd already been put in, he got out, and that's when he murdered the girlfriend.
Correct.
And then
so
he's found not guilty.
But we still have our process.
Yes.
Sure.
That we do,
okay.
Right?
So this is interesting. You're saying this.
Right.
Okay.
So we do our process. And the amount of time we spent, like, on record was 13 hours for this hearing.
Wow.
We reset 3 or 4 times.
Wow.
You know, like different days to keep it going. We had attorneys. We had lots of witnesses. I had lots and lots of exhibits. Actually had the medical examiner, not the assistant, but the medical examiner come and testify because I established a timeline on him. So she died on a specific day, right? The next day he goes another part of Texas to the emergency room with a broken hand. Okay. There was also semen found, right? Which was his. Well, it only lives, 24 hours.
Yeah.
Something like that. So the medical examiner came to say, well, his semen was still alive, when they found her. So we put this timeline all together, I got medical records from the hospital,
You're like doing the work of detectives. Like,
yeah, it's fun.
Was it fun?
Yeah.
You seem like
you're
really
like
into
law
it.
and
Yeah,
order.
it was fun.
This is so cool.
Yeah, I mean, I loved my job, like that
can
part
tell.
of it. But I also had the lead detective helping me so much.
Yeah.
He actually went and got this homeless man who knows the parolee very well, who he told that man that he had killed her. And he picked him up, brought him, and he testified and said, yeah, he told me he killed her. Oh, wow. So, yeah. So he did go back to prison, but only because of a parole violation, not for murder.
That's just crazy.
Okay,
and that poor
that's where
woman's
I go
family.
in it. Yeah,
I'm
I
like,
go
that
in
poor
where's the
woman's family.
closure for that poor lady?
Well, I did get to call her and tell her,
Right.
that he was going back to prison. And she was so thankful. She passed away about 3 weeks after that.
Oh my
God,
gosh,
that
a
makes my
broken heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how long did he go back in?
I'm not really sure. But
Long
let
enough?
me just say what scared me about him was his demeanor was, whoa. Like he would just sit there like.
And just stare
Very
at you.
intimidating.
Trying to.
Yeah.
And he would laugh and be like,
Oh.
I don't care. And just laugh and this and that. And just, like he'd say, you're never going to get me, And then when he went back, it's like, ooh. So fast forward a few years, I'm a hearing officer, right? It's like my first year. Guess who pops up for me to do a hearing?
No way.
Yes. So I go to my supervisor, right? Who was the hearing officer for the case. I said, you're never going to believe who I just got assigned. He said, don't worry about it. You're not doing it.
Good.
Yeah. So.
But did you ever worry that he had your name or that he would look you up or anything like that?
I did for a little bit, but I've kept tabs on him.
Yeah.
And he's sickly.
Well, and here's the thing, though. You say that because this is interesting. I had something happen to me a while back, and it was a situation where the guy murdered, like in the 80s, in Mesquite, murdered someone. And he got put in prison. It was life. It was supposed to be life without parole.
Yeah.
And he got out on technicality because he had a heart condition.
I don't know.
But listen, he didn't have no heart condition because he didn't act like it. But it was like literally he's like, well, apparently I murdered her, and he's laughing in front of me because he came into my house to do some repair work, and I didn't know the story on him.
Yeah.
It was a referral.
Okay.
So when I picked up the phone to call the guy and say, hey, did you know this guy over here has been in prison? And he's like, no. What was his friend, his brother that he's working? So it was the brother and the guy that just got out of prison, which were their brothers. But my whole thing I was like, this guy brutally murdered a woman, had sex with the corpse, like several days after her body had been laying there, was put in prison for life, and he's out on a technicality because of his health, but he looks totally fine. Yeah. How do you beat the system like that? Like,
so that's like way out of my element because that's like it's all encompassed, under Texas Department of Criminal Justice,
right.
But I really don't know much about
those kinds
how
of technicalities.
institutional division works, with all of that. I mean, there's like magic formulas to when people get released. I don't know. I never worked on that side, so.
But even the things you're seeing, people getting out and then deciding whether they go back in, and it's they're used, like you said, just sometimes it depends on someone's opinion, maybe not even facts. Like if a parole officer doesn't have a good relationship with that offender.
But I'll pull that out because I'm like, wait, how is this person? Why are you here?
Yeah,
that would just burn me up because that's just so unfair.
Right.
Because you don't like somebody.
Yeah.
No.
You shouldn't have this job because
exactly.
this job is a job of having to think really long and hard, but also having grace.
Because someone's life is in your hands.
That's right.
You could be like the woman that you were mentoring.
Yeah.
Because I look at that as you were mentoring her. You were being, and I say mentor, you just loved her. You loved her despite her good and bad.
I did.
And everybody needs that, right?
And she was so sweet.
I know. And but then it hurts my heart going, why couldn't someone replace you? Which I know there's not a to you, but replace you and giving her that same grace to where she didn't fall back.
I agree. And that's happened so many times.
It probably happens every day.
It does. It happens a lot.
Well, you were always friends with everybody. You always stuck up for people. You always were that person. You were everybody's friend.
Oh yeah, still am. I love everybody. I talk to everybody.
So it's so neat to have someone that did your role who is non-judgmental, who just wants to see people do well. I think that's just such a plus.
Yeah. But I can pull out the ones that really, are a threat to society and don't really need to be out. Because, this is how flawed the system is. And this is what makes zero sense to me. You can molest a child and get 5 years. But you can sell drugs and get 30.
Girl.
And it makes no sense to me.
No.
Exactly.
No sense. I mean, I know what goes into some of the sexual offenses like that. It's to keep the children from having to testify or relive. I understand that because I've dealt with that before too. But it's wrong in every sense of the word to me.
And there's other ways to get the child's story without putting them through that.
But there's constitutional rights. Yeah. The rights to confront and cross-examine, It's
the poor babies, it's just not.
Yeah, it's bad.
Oh.
It's bad.
Yeah. I as a mama, I know you're a mama, we're all mamas, but I'm like, I don't know if the poor guy would make it to court. But just me,
Probably those cases were the most difficult for me, for sure.
So that's my next question to you. Next question to you is, working the system as long as you did, how did you take care of your own mental health and maintain?
Yeah, that's a great question.
So, sometimes it was really hard. I learned how to leave work at work.
Okay.
And go
Which
home.
I would have, I mean, that's hard.
I had to learn how to do that, and I had to, just really, separate things. Now, some things, they do follow you because,
There's some things you can't quite shed.
Right.
Like when I worked in foster care, you have to compartmentalize because you cannot take that stuff home with you.
Right.
But at the same time, there's stuff that you can't shed. And it's still like you're trying to move on about your mom life when you get home. Yet there's just this heavy burden sitting on your shoulders. And you're looking at your children and you're like, what I just saw is horrifying. And I'm looking at my babies and just thinking, thank God,
And they would both tell you, I trusted not a soul.
Yeah.
I wonder.
With my kids.
Yeah.
Everything you saw.
My son, who is 26, he spent the night away from home once.
Oh, wow.
That wasn't family. Once.
Because of all the things you were exposed to and saw.
Yes, because I trusted no one with my children.
Yeah.
Except, family
or
somebody I really, really, really knew.
Yeah.
It makes you more hypervigilant.
Yeah, and my daughter even, she spent the night away, but not a lot.
Yeah.
It would be the same people.
Yeah, it's the people that you know and felt really comfortable with.
Yeah, and I can just pop in, and plus, she was going to tell me anything and everything, so.
Not Cassidy. She didn't know.
I couldn't do everything that went on with her.
Poor kid. She's shaking her head over
right
here.
There.
Yeah.
She's like, yes,
she talked nonstop.
Yeah.
But what a blessing, though. What a blessing that is.
No, and that is true. And let me ask you a question, too. So, because as a curious mind from a child, the kids will, but why? But why? But why? But why?
And you know what I would say? Because I don't know them. I don't know what kind of people they are. And I don't want anything to happen to you.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. Sometimes would they get mad? Yes. But I said it for so long.
That they knew,
As
not
a-
to
as a
ask
record.
anymore.
Yeah. You know, now, number 2 kid was the pusher, you know. Hence, she did spend the night with more people. However,
You got to know those moms.
I
you got to
did.
know-
And it was usually, you know, year-round travel softball moms.
Yeah.
And the mom that
Yeah.
I would, you know, that we did
shared
stuff.
hotel rooms with or whatever.
Yeah, and we would go to do things other than, you know, play ball,
Yeah.
you know. So, yeah. Or the next door neighbor. But I preferred for her to have people at my house.
Sure,
Yes.
that's
You
how
know.
I was too.
Yeah.
I was one of those moms that would, because
100%.
I had control
Yeah.
over the situation,
Yeah.
the dynamics,
Yeah.
and it's like you said, you did. But I was that way without being exposed to what
Yes.
you're exposed to. So I'm
Yeah.
like, I can't imagine how you. I mean, that's a lot of like.
Oh, don't
You-
think I don't go Google these people. Or go be looking. You know, I mean, I can't.
She's
you
got her
know,
PI
I don't
license.
do anything illegal, you know, but you can check.
Yeah. I
All
would
kinds of
wonder.
records for free.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
for sure.
I would
know.
wonder, especially ones that you thought could come back, you know, that you would want to know where they are. You know.
Yeah, I don't too much worry about it too much anymore. Yeah, not too much anymore.
That's good. That's got to
Yeah.
be a good feeling.
Yeah.
So, you know, Brandy asked about your mental health. Like, how did you manage that? What did it look like, especially on days that were harder? Like, I mean, did you find yourself ever getting overly anxious or feeling depressed?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And my vice was smoking,
Yeah.
you know, and it's horrible, but
I
It's
mean,
the thing that
you gotta- yeah,
gave
that-
you
yeah.
calmness.
yeah, I mean, you know, I don't drink,
Yeah.
you know, nothing, you know, like that. So, yeah, just sit outside, you know. So have I cried? Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
always good to have a good cry,
Yeah.
though, right?
Yeah. And, you know, I can't come home and say, oh, guys, guess what happened today?
Yeah.
You know, you can't.
You can't.
No.
But and even if you did, they're never going to be on that same level you are from what you got exposed to.
Yeah. Now, I worked from home. We worked from home for about 5 years during all
The COVID
right?
stuff.
So they would hear, like, my hearings going on, you know, and after they're done, they'd be like,
Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, oh, that's just every day for me.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's no big deal.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
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 So what about mental health in the system? Like, I mean, obviously you're
just
seeing
ask that,
there's a correlation between, you know,
Yes.
people who are in jail and mental health. And so what are some of the things that you're seeing that people should really understand and, you know, that we really need to be focused on working on those changes so that, you know.
So, yes, there are more than you would think, and more parolees than you would think that are affected by some type of mental health.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so many. Some are as a result of, you know, multiple years of drug use, alcohol use, you know, childhood trauma, you know, all kinds of things. You know, the ones that really kind of get me are the veterans that end
Yes.
up in the system, you know, because they didn't get the help that they needed. And most of them are in there for, you know, like drugs.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
things like that. And to me, that's horrible. You know, horrible.
Yeah, it's like they're in there for that. It's like, why are we putting them in prison? Why aren't we putting them in rehabilitation?
And they do have that.
Uh-huh.
They do.
But they're in there with a mixture of. There's no like separation from murderers from. Is there murderers from?
Well, you have different levels.
Right.
You know, low
Right.
security,
Yeah.
or minimum security. You know,
Right.
medium, high. You know, yeah. But is there a mix of people?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Do you
know?
feel like especially when they get let out on parole, do you feel like there's enough follow-up to mental health? Do parole officers make sure they're going to appointments with therapists? Is there a
If they
treatment
are on
plan
that
for them?
caseload, yes.
Okay.
So they do have specific caseloads for persons who need to be on. It's called Special Needs Offender Program. So they, you know, have the office is actually shared, or the one in Dallas anyway, is shared with MetroCare.
Mm-hmm.
So they're
Okay.
in the same lobby. So all they have to do, I mean, they can do doctor appointment and parole officer appointment on the same day.
Oh, that's good.
You know, and things like that, you know. So, yes, there are that. I don't think there's enough.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say.
There's never enough even just for people that aren't.
Yeah. Well, they can't keep fully staffed either.
Right. There's a big turnover, especially in places like Metro Care. They're seeing so many people. And, you know, I just don't, a lot of times the staff just get really, really worn out. Yeah. So I'm real familiar with Metro Care based on, you know, from just working in the hospital system. And so there are people with really good hearts who just get really worn out. And so it's a hard job. I don't feel like that's big enough. I don't think there's enough staff.
Yeah.
So, you know, I know that they try to grow.
On the parole side, you know, I don't think there's enough officers that have that caseload.
Yeah.
But parole can't keep parole officers either. They have been understaffed for years. Their caseloads are so high, it's so hard for them to give individual attention.
Yeah.
You know.
And it is.
It's ridiculously high.
It's like the same thing with CPS. And I think a lot of it is the people aren't getting paid their value, right?
Agreed.
And so when they're underpaid and overworked and overstressed.
In that field especially, I'm like.
Yeah. This is what's going to happen to whether it's a mental health professional or a parole officer or a CPS worker. And those are like jobs that we need. Yes. So finding ways, I feel like in the reform system is to get people's pay where it should be and get the level of appreciation up so that these people feel like they have some.
It's like a losing battle.
It is.
Like, let me tell you, when I started, I will just tell you what my salary was when I started in 1997. It was $2,098 a month in 1997.
That's crazy.
When I first started.
And you're talking about driving around, checking on people, putting yourself in dangerous situations. Did you carry with you?
No.
Did you feel like you ever needed to carry?
No.
Really?
No.
That's
because, like, when I would have to go to, like, what I would call the, you know, the riskier neighborhoods, like back then they still had these projects in West Dallas. They're not there anymore. But there was I would go early in the morning. The kids are going to school at a police storefront. The police were there. You know, here I am walking around, you know, with a clipboard, you know, and all that. They knew I wasn't there. I was there either, you know, parole, probation, CPS, something. You know.
Yeah.
So no.
And people pretty much left you alone.
Yeah, I know. I never had any trouble. It was worse being inside of the jail.
Yeah.
Than it was, because I would have to go to, like, when I was in a pre-rep officer, I would have to go to the jail and interview people too. And that was where it was bad.
Okay.
Just, I remember being
catcalled and everything else.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was 8 months pregnant with my son. And I don't know if I can say this on here, but I look over and
guy's ejaculating.
Yeah, masturbating. I'm like, I'm 8 months pregnant. Like, really? And they would say horrible things, you know. But I just have to let it, you know, roll off your back or whatever. But that's where it was worse in there, you know. It brings
me to the point of a woman in the criminal justice system, being a woman officer in the criminal justice. You know, you really surprised me when we were talking about this before we started the show that you were saying there's a lot of women.
A lot.
Yeah, and that really surprised me.
There's a lot of women in that work for parole and for the Board of Pardons and Paroles. Actually, you know, when I retired, there were 7 or 8 of us, and we're all one man. That's it, in our little unit of hearing officers.
So that's totally goes against the stereotype I was thinking.
Yeah, me
Plus
too.
Plus, all of our supervisors were females. Even our chair is female. Who's over everything.
Interesting.
That is really
There's a lot of females. Yeah. Now, what you run into are men that don't want a woman telling them what to do.
Yeah.
Like, as far as, like, a parolee. Oh, I would run into that all the time.
Yeah.
How would you set them straight? That or go back to jail?
Yeah, I'm very, I don't know. I'm very
blunt.
Very
Me
blunt.
too. I am too. So I'm like, you know, don't let the door hit you.
You know, you can say whatever you want to me. I don't care.
Yeah.
You know, do what you need to do.
She's even got that look on her face when she's
Yeah.
saying I love it.
Yeah. Because what you think about me is not my business.
Yeah, I'm your, and it's almost like you're at my mercy right now. I mean,
but it would be, it would. Now, for the most part, I'm going to say most people were respectful.
Yeah.
Because I'm giving you the respect that you deserve as a human.
Right.
And I expect it in return.
Right.
You know, I don't know you. I don't know what's going on. You know, I'm here to conduct this hearing, and, you know, I would never, ever call anybody other than ma'am or sir or by their last name, ever.
How hard was that with the children, though, the children cases that you had to deal with?
I cried really bad after one of those because it just broke my heart to hear this child say what
happened to her.
Yes, it was bad. I've had moms kicking, you know, the kid, and I said,
to keep their mouth shut?
Excuse me. You know, I called it out.
Of course you would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so I did these other hearings. They were like, so only a few of us in the state did these. They were like special sex offender condition hearing things, what they were called. Those were horrible because it's people that went to prison, but not for a sex offense. They weren't convicted of a sex offense, but the offense had sexual elements. Like, say they were arrested for sexual assault of a child, but they were able to plead down to injury to a child and go to prison. So then when they get out, then they have these special hearings, right, to where the board determines if they need sex offender conditions put on them.
Wow.
I don't think they should be able to plea down in the sex offense of a child. I don't think they should be able to plea down.
I totally agree with that, you know, but that's the court system.
See, and that's
crazy to me.
And that's where I come back all the time. I'm going to say it to you too. I come back all the time with these law enforcement, people like you. You do your job. You're doing your job. It's the courts that are letting us down. They're letting us down. They're letting the worst people out.
Yes.
And they're keeping some of the good ones that could be
reformed and have it.
Yes.
And then there's this hatred that builds up with the animosity builds up with them because they're seeing people out on the street that have raped, murdered children, women, people, and they're in for like a pot possession.
Yeah. Yeah, it's difficult. And, you know, you just have to work with what you have in front of you, you know.
Yeah. And you're doing your part by making sure that you're providing justice to the system.
Yeah. And just, you know, gathering what I need. And honestly, when I would do those hearings, I would have to, it would take me about a week. I would have to, like, prepare myself mentally for about a week before, because I would know about them for about a month, because those are, like few and far between. And they're long, and they're detailed, and
graphic. I mean, everything.
Oh, very, very graphic. And you just feel disgusting after it's over.
And that's when you're going to mentally prepare for that. So you're doing a lot of self-talk, like I'm going to do this, I'm doing this is what I'm going to leave this here. And then you go home at the end of the day.
Usually when I would finish one of those, most of the time I didn't get anything else done the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Because
mentally exhausted.
And it's just disgusting, you know, especially when it's like their own child.
Well, and then they go home. You go home and you look at your babies.
Oh yeah.
And you're like, now I'm going, okay. I mean, I was one of those people that didn't like my kids staying with people very much, and now I know why.
Right.
You're like it, and because I'm sure you're seeing people that we think look like they should be in jail, and the people that look like white-collared regular people.
But who looks like they should be in jail?
That's right.
Doesn't discriminate.
That's right. Yeah, but you know,
you see
them more than we do, right?
Yeah.
So we have this visual of the bad guy looks like the bad guy, but the bad guy could be wearing scrubs and be a doctor. You know,
he could be wearing a suit and tie and be a banker.
Yeah.
Most sex offenders are white males.
Yeah.
White males.
That's good for people to hear. I think that is a good statistic for people to hear.
Most sex offenders are white males.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And so I think that, these are things people should know. I think these are things we should draw this out, because I don't think people really understand what goes on in the system.
It's very, very intricate, very detailed, very flawed. But there are some really good things about it. I loved my job. I absolutely loved it.
So the good things of helping people outweighed the bad things you had to see and hear.
Absolutely, absolutely. Plus, when you get those, detailed high-profile cases, and all the work you have to do on them, and, the digging here and there, okay, and just figuring it all out, it's just, I've always loved it. Like, even before while I was in college, like, I loved reading books on serial killers and things like that.
I'm the same way.
So,
and my girls are too. And they're like, Mom, you raised a monster. I'm like, I'm keeping you informed.
Yeah, I mean, it just fascinates me.
Me too.
I want to be in the mind of that person.
Yeah.
Like, why did you do that?
Yeah.
How come you don't have any remorse?
Yeah. Did you come from a history of violence?
Like
were you abused? Or, what were you exposed to? Or did it just something click in you? Or, I'm like you. I love that kind. You should be a crime sleuth now. You should start your own crime.
Private investigator.
You should start your own crime podcast.
Right. I love listening to them.
No, I'm serious. You'd be you would got a slew full of stories already.
That would be so awesome.
Yeah.
So that brings me to, what does early retired Katie do with what her passion is to help people, and now you're doing what?
Right now I'm doing nothing.
I know you're recovering.
You got a grandbaby though.
I do.
You do got a grandbaby, so that keeps you on your toes, right?
Yeah. So I'm just I got to get baby girl registered in college and all that stuff, so we're doing that. We are going to be moving, so we're trying to get into doing that to be closer to my mom and my sisters. My mom has early dementia. So I want to be, thank you, I want to be there, closer with her.
Yeah.
And just to be able to hang out, and she's so excited. So
where's that at? Where's that closer?
Bullard, Tyler area.
Okay, yeah. Where the roses are, Tyler Roses, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
awesome.
Yeah, so once I get settled there, actually my sister and I are going to, my youngest sister, are going to have an online resale business. We're starting that.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'll be at home, so I'll be able to.
What are you reselling? What kind of stuff?
We're going to start with like what we have, like our higher end clothing, things like that. Our goal is to, make enough money where we can start buying pallets and reselling like that.
Very fun. I love that. So my brain is already going, and I'm thinking of all kinds of things that you can do with Brandy and I. And we love to do trainings for first responders and police. I can think that
the prison system.
I was just thinking, wow, what a great asset you would be in helping us get those rolling.
Yeah.
Let's go.
That would be awesome. That'd be so much fun. Yeah. And because I'm like you, my heart says people are going to make mistakes in life. How much grace are you going to give to them to where they feel like they're good enough to redeem themselves?
And not everyone is horrible.
No.
I mean, did they do something horrible to end up in prison? They did. Are some of them wanting to pay their debt and then move on and be something in their life? Yes, they are.
I believe that. I've seen it, and I believe it,
too.
and I think that we need more people like you out in the world that are going to give that grace to people. They're going to love them and give them hope, because I think hope and not so judgmental.
Yeah.
100%.
But I think in your career, you've seen so many people, and you kind of know which ones are going to repeat. It's hard to have that grace.
Yeah.
But
I had this, so he just popped into my mind. He was young. He was 19. I had him 2 times. And he had just gotten out of prison. He was on a monitor, and he was on, like, one of the super intensive, like, he had to be exactly where he was supposed to be, and so he wasn't really following that because he wanted to, be with his family, and his family also wasn't like trying to make him stick to the rules, right? So I had him once, and he didn't get revoked, but he did go to a lockup facility that's like a middle-of-the-road punishment, for a amount of time. Then he got out, and he came back, and I got him again. And I remember him saying, nobody cares about me. They just think I'm a number. I said, let me stop you right there. I do care about you. You are young. You have your whole life ahead of you. I put my pen down, and, I said, mom mode's coming out now. I said, you have a lot of life left. You can do so much. You just have to get past this part, follow the rules, and do what you need to do, and move on, and you can be something. You have so many years ahead of you, Got sent back to prison.
That's so hard because while you're giving them that encouragement, they're going back to an environment that's not encouraging.
That's it right there.
And if that environment doesn't change, it's really hard for them to hear or to believe what you're saying.
Now, I know why he went back. I understand it because, he had, altogether, those 2 times, he had over 100 violations.
What kind of violations, though? We're talking like drug possession?
No. Stealing, theft?
No. He was just going wherever he wanted to go and being places he's not supposed to be.
Oh, because of his monitor.
Right.
So it wasn't that he was doing anything wrong, but he wasn't following the rules.
Wrong, but, and he was...
He wasn't following rules.
Yeah, he was not where he was supposed to be, ever.
Okay.
So, So I understand it.
Yeah.
On that side, I understand it.
Yeah.
It just, he's young. And he had no direction in his life. His mom wasn't there
structure.
For him.
Yeah.
That's just without that support system.
And when you don't have it, I wish people understood, if you don't have something or if you've been exposed to something in life, that's your normal. That's all you know.
Yeah.
And so that's where the grace comes in and says, hey, I get whatever, but then there's got to be a moment of teaching saying, look, you've been given so many options here and you continue to take advantage of them.
Right.
So there's, consequences to your actions.
And he understood that,
yeah.
But he did not want to go back to prison. I really didn't want to see him go back to prison. It wasn't my decision. I understand it because that's a lot of violations. You can't just do what you want to do, But, like I said, he said his mom wasn't there. A lot of times he'd have to fend for himself. They were homeless, when they were younger. A lot of trauma, Dad was doing dad thing,
No consistency, no one to show him how to make good decisions.
Right, no. And so he wanted to be with his sisters. Because he wanted love so bad.
Right.
And that's where it makes you wonder, how people that go into halfway houses, it makes you wonder, like, if you had a system more like that where instead of taking them back to prison, you put them in somewhere that was...
You don't want to go to a halfway house here.
You don't.
Not here, yeah.
They're horrible.
Yeah.
Their problems.
Those need to be reformed.
Yes, even the people that work there, they will write people up to have them put in jail for no reason. I've seen it over and over and over again.
Just because they don't like them?
Yes.
Wow.
Because they think they're something.
Well, I'm not saying necessarily halfway house, but something that was more like a facility that allowed
reform.
Reform them more. That's a problem. I think we see
helping
a lot of
them
people
find jobs, helping them get mental health care.
Yeah.
They do have that. They do have those programs.
Yeah,
they do.
Do you think they're working?
If the offender puts in the work they need to put in,
okay.
Yes.
You can't expect the program to do all the work. You have to make the people have to be willing.
Explain that too. Yeah. It's not going to be handed to you. You have to do the work.
Yeah,
that's one person running this class.
Right.
Mm-hmm. You have to go to Texas Workforce.
Apply yourself.
You have to go to these classes. You have to apply for these jobs, and
there's
again,
not a lot of but a lot of them haven't been taught how to follow through.
That's
right?
true.
Because of the lack of structure,
That's very true. Yeah.
So walking away from this, we are so excited, and thank you so much for being on our
so
show,
much,
because this
Katie.
is such
It's been
good
amazing.
information.
It's
But
great information.
What's the one thing you want people to walk away with? If you could give anybody a message with what you've learned in your career and what you're doing, what would it be?
It would be to listen, be fair, be impartial, be non-judgmental, but definitely always watch your surroundings. Know the people your kids are with, know the people you let in your house. It's a flawed system. It's not a perfect system. Does it work sometimes? It does work sometimes, but it's just so much,
But living, be cautious in how
Always.
you live.
Always.
But also don't forget to look for the good in people.
Yeah.
Correct. Yes. Don't be compassionate.
Yeah. That's a
Be
huge word.
compassionate.
That's a huge
You
word.
know, and I was so happy when we were driving down here. My daughter said, "You know what I did yesterday?" I said, "What?" She said, "I bought a homeless man a burrito." I said,
Aww, I love that.
I love that too.
I love that.
And it just is like, okay, well, good.
Yeah.
She's seeing it, because I've done that many, many times.
Yes.
Yeah,
many
me too.
times.
Makes my heart happy.
It does.
You never know how much that one good gesture will change
Yeah.
someone's life a
Yeah.
day. Someone
Absolutely.
loved you.
A
Someone cared about you.
In anything,
Yeah.
and it's really it seems like it's like doesn't make sense, but be cautious, but be compassionate. It seems like
You can be cautiously compassionate.
You can, but are there a lot of people out there that are out there for the wrong reasons?
you, yeah.
Absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
Which that's a fine line for-
counterintuitive, and you don't want your compassion to blind you.
That's
to
where I mess up.
Absolutely.
That's where I mess up. That's where
Absolutely.
I would benefit from having
Yes.
the
expert over here.
Yeah, because there's been so many times, and my kids are like, "Mom, you just love and see the best in everybody." I try to, but then you get on my bad side, and it's done. Like there's no grace.
Well, I always tell my daughter, always know your surroundings.
Yeah,
everywhere.
I do too. I tell my girls
yes.
the same thing.
I look around
When
the
you're running,
store when I'm
one
there.
earbud in,
Yep.
one earbud out.
I know where everybody is.
for exit plans.
Yes, everything.
Yeah.
But
And
do
then
I talk to
people are
everybody?
like, you live in
Yes.
fear, and I'm like,
Yes.
I'm not living in fear. I'm living in
Because
smart.
they don't scare me.
No.
I'm just knowing what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you don't
I
ever
don't
know
want to be
what's
caught
gonna
off guard,
pop
yeah.
off somewhere.
Well, and here's the deal. It may not affect you, but it could affect the person on the next dial. And
That's
if
right.
you were paying attention to it, you can get a description
Yeah.
of whatever's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like if I'm in the line at the pharmacy, it could be somebody that looks like you standing in front of me, and then somebody that some people would perceive as, a thug or something behind me. Well, you know who I'm going to choose to talk to?
That one.
The man behind
Oh,
me.
yeah, behind you,
Hey,
yeah.
what's going on?
Yeah.
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 But that also is reformative for them to know that
Yeah.
I'm seen, I matter.
Yes.
I
Yes.
think that's also reformative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because,
So.
Well, some of the roughest looking people are not. They
they're
got
the
hearts of
sweetest.
gold, and they've got
Some
such
of
good
them.
stories to tell you.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
And it's like a double-edged sword, the
Yes.
criminal justice system, and
Yeah.
then being in it for so long and how life is, and,
Yes. Law, justice, and compassion. Those are hard things
Yeah.
to follow.
it is.
Well, thank you so much, Katie,
Thank
for
you.
coming on.
Thank
And
you
we
for having
loved
me.
having
Yes.
you.
Well,
So
thank you.
thank you so much.
If you or anyone you know is struggling with mental health issues, please reach out to talk to someone you trust. Get connected to a mental health professional who can help you find ways to cope and ultimately feel better. If you are having suicidal or self-harm thoughts or thoughts of hurting another person, please go to the nearest ER, call 911, or contact the National Suicide Hotline at 988. Thank you for tuning in to Mental Perk. We hope our talk today highlighted real people working through real issues based on mental health. Our goal at Mental Perk is to make sure every one of you knows you're worthy. We're in this together.